The moon hung low over Widow's Grove, its silver light washing through the cracked rose window of St. Elspeth's Church. Inside, the air was thick with incense's ghost dust motes drifting like silent worshippers. Sister Eleanor Reed knelt at the altar, her white habit glowing in the pale luminescence. In her hands she clutched a tattered prayer book, lips moving in fervent supplication. "Saint Elspeth, guide my hand, heal your flock this night." Behind her the nave's shadows trembled, a single candle flickered at the altar's edge, casting spindly silhouettes on broken pews and shattered statues of saints. Eleanor rose, stepping onto the marble dais. Her voice rang clear but piercing. "Let the faithful find solace in God's mercy." She raised her arms, palms open to the heavens. The murmurs of congregants, gathered for the midnight miracle, rushed against the threshold, unseen. A distant tree branch tapped against stained glass, slicing through Eleanor's prayer. Suddenly, the candle flared white-hot, then extinguished in a sizzle of ozone. Eleanor's chest heaved. Beads of sweat glinted on her brow. She glanced upward, her pupils once dark, fractured into jagged slivers of red. A low growl escaped her throat, ripping through the hush. "Pastie." Her mouth drew into a grin too wide, too sharp. The marble floor beneath her cracked in spiderweb fissures. With a single inhuman exhale, she doubled over, and the altar's crucifix behind her tilted, toppling forward, in silent horror. From the rafters, unseen choirs of wailing voices echoed. Voices not of angels but of something far older. Eleanor's spine curved unnaturally. Her fingers splayed into talon-like hooks. She stepped off the dais, each footfall a ground-shaking thud. "Behold," she hissed, voice layered in whispers and roars, "the mercy of the saint." She lunged into the nave, and the door slammed behind her. In that final heartbeat, the congregants heard only her laughter, cold and jagged, before the moonlight drowned in darkness. Before we delve into the darkness at St. Elspeth's, hit subscribe and ring the bell. Then tell us where you're watching from in the comments. Tonight's journey takes us to 1799 Virginia, where Sister Eleanor Reed's miraculous gift becomes a gateway to unspeakable terror. We'll witness how faith can twist into horror beneath moonlit arches, follow a desperate exorcist's battle against an unholy saint, and uncover the secrets lurking behind every prayer. Stay with us as we unmask the monster born of mercy and madness in the hush of Widow's Grove's ancient church. The year is 1799, and the tobacco fields of Tidewater, Virginia swell under a hot August sun. Spanish moss drapes from ancient oaks like veils laid over the land's sorrowful history. At the heart of this fertile expanse lies Widow's Grove Plantation, long owned by the Ashford family, planters whose fortunes rose and fell with the tobacco markets. A half-mile from the main house stands St. Elspeth's Church, a small Gothic structure of gray fieldstone, long abandoned. Its steeple collapsed in a gale 15 years before, and the rusted iron bell lies broken in the nave. Ivy crawls across its moss-slick walls. The glassless windows gape like vacant eyes. Locals whisper that the church is haunted by lost souls. But to Sister Eleanor Reed, the building embodies mercy waiting to be restored. The plantation at dawn. As dawn breaks, enslaved laborers move among the tobacco rows, leaves as big as hands gleaming with dew. Overseer Chapman calls orders in clipped tones. The planter's son, Jude Ashford, rides at his side. Behind the fields, the big house, a white-columned Georgian mansion, has come alive. The day's gilt-edged routines unfold. Silver trays of tea in the morning parlor, children learning letters in the breezeway, and the matriarch, Lady Catherine Ashford, consulting account books in her study. But all is not serene. Lady Catherine mourns her late husband, lost at sea 2 years past. Her grief echoes through empty corridors. Jude's sister, Isabel, once vibrant, now wanders the house in quiet despair. In the midst of their sorrow, Catherine Ashford seized one desperate hope: to bring a devout woman from her native England to serve as parish healer and spiritual confidant. That woman is Sister Eleanor Reed. Sister Eleanor's arrival. Eleanor steps from the planter's carriage at the plantation gate, her gray habit pristine, rosary beads clicking in her hand. Though not a cloistered nun, she belongs to a traveling order that answers calls for aid in remote community. Her carriage is simple: a single chest for vestments and a battered Bible. She bows to Lady Catherine, who greets her with tight-lipped relief. "Welcome, Sister Reed. I fear my family has lost both hope and faith." Eleanor inclines her head. "Your family shall have both restored, madam." Behind them, Jude eyes the newcomer with caution. Isabel regards her with mild curiosity. Eleanor's gentle English accent floats over the fields, drawing laborers' gazes as she passes. She carries herself with prayerful serenity, yet her gray eyes hold a fierce spark, as if she already senses the church's silent summons. St. Elspeth's in the twilight. That evening, Eleanor walks alone along the overgrown path to St. Elspeth. The sun lowers behind the ridge, flames of orange and purple threading through cypress branches. She pushes aside ivy at the entrance and steps inside. The air is thick with mildew. The boards underfoot creak with rusted nails. Peeling paint from once white pillars flakes like ashes. Eleanor lights a lantern from her carriage supply and holds it aloft. Soft golden light spreads across broken pews and shattered windows. She prepares a small altar of cloth and brass candlestick, placing her Bible and a vial of blessed oil on the stone communion rail. Kneeling, she prays, "St. Elspeth, patron of the lost, guide my hands and heart tonight." A wind stirs through the nave, and the lantern's flame flickers, not from draught, but as if responding. Eleanor smiles softly, folding her hands in prayer. She senses an echo of faith here, buried beneath neglect and time. A faith she intends to rekindle, a healing touch, returning at dawn. Eleanor is met by Lady Catherine and the plantation doctor, Dr. Langston. They follow her to the infirmary, a one-room outbuilding, where the sick and injured find care. Dr. Langston, a practical man in a black waistcoat, greets her. "Sister Reed, this fever has claimed 5 souls this week." Eleanor lays her hand on a patient's brow, murmuring prayers in Latin. Her voice is soft, authoritative. Within moments, the patient's breathing eases. Beads of sweat recede. A hush stretches across the room as the planter's son steps forward. Incredulous, Eleanor only smiles. God's mercy works through willing hearts. Word of her healing spreads swiftly. Journeymen stopped in their fields to bow their heads as she passed. Children laughed at being made well. Lady Catherine's tear-streaked gratitude became daily prayers of thanksgiving. Yet behind each miracle flickered unease, an unsettling tension in Eleanor's serene countenance, as if she carried a burden no prayer could lift. Shadows in the pulpit. Over the next week, Eleanor convenes evening prayers in St. Elspeth. She refurbishes the altar with white linen, polishes brass candlesticks, and hangs fresh oil lamps. Villagers from across Widow's Grove gather, some kneel reverent, others wary. Eleanor's voice rings through the broken nave. "Come find solace in God's light. Let no heart be burdened alone." Between petitions, the wind sighs through shattered glass. In the pulpit's shadow, a shape shifts, too tall for any worshiper, too silent to be human. An old carpenter, Talbot, swears he saw Eleanor's silhouette recede into the rafters, though she stood in the aisle. That night, Isabel Ashford visits Eleanor's quarters. Pale and anxious, she confides in hushed tones, "I've seen Sister Reed slumbering at prayers. yet her voice echoes through the church hours after. Eleanor's eyes darken. Rest, little Isabel. The Lord's work may test us beyond sleep, beneath the moonlight. Late one night, Eleanor returns alone to the church to pray for Lady Catherine's faltering health. The moon, a ghostly crescent, streams through the rose window. As she kneels before the altar, the lantern beside her flickers and dies. The room plunges into silver and shadow. Eleanor's whispered prayer halts as a low rasp drifts from the pulpit. Sancta Elspeth, live again. Eleanor grasps her crucifix. Her eyes lift. In the pulpit stands a figure draped in tattered robes, face hidden in shadow. A single pale hand emerges, beckoning. Eleanor's breath catches. She steps forward, heart pounding. Who calls upon the saint? She asks, voice quavering. The figure leans forward, revealing glowing eyes that lock onto Eleanor's, drawing a flicker of fear across her calm facade. Eleanor's hand tightens on the crucifix, lips moving in silent prayer. As she steps back, the figure vanishes. The lantern sputters back to life, bathing the nave in warm light. The pulpit is empty, save for a single white feather drifting down from above. Eleanor catches the feather, cradles it in her hand. Beneath her touch, it pulses with an uncanny warmth. A tremor runs through the church, like a heartbeat awakening after a long death. A saint's burden. Eleanor retreats to the plantation in the early hours, the feather tucked in her habit. At sunrise, Lady Catherine greets her with hopeful eyes. Have you rested, Sister Reed? Eleanor forces a gentle smile. The Lord's work never sleeps. Yet as Eleanor tends the planter's house and prays with Isabel, shadows of the church cling to her. In quiet moments, she feels the feather's warmth against her heart, a reminder that something ancient has stirred in St. Elspeth's, and that she, their newly arrived healer, may be the catalyst for a grace and a horror far greater than any miracle. As Widow's Grove stirs beneath another summer dawn, the fields heavy with tobacco, the abandoned church creaks in silent watch. Sister Eleanor Reed has brought renewed faith to the plantation, but the shadows that whispered through the pulpit hint at a trial yet to come, one that will test her faith beyond mercy's edge. We'll witness how faith can twist into horror beneath moonlit arches, follow a desperate exorcist's battle against an unholy saint, and uncover the secrets lurking behind every prayer. Stay with us as we unmask the monster born of mercy and madness in the hush of Widow's Grove's ancient church. Word of Sister Eleanor Reed's healing touch spread across Widow's Grove, like tobacco pollen on a summer breeze. By the second week of her ministry, the abandoned nave of St. Elspeth's filled each evening with worshippers, enslaved field hands, plantation mistresses, even skeptical gentlemen from the riverside estates. They came for prayer, for solace, and for the promise of a miracle. A fever broken, one humid dusk, Eleanor stood at the threshold of the church, lantern in hand. She motioned the herd of shivering patients inside. A boy with ague's chills, a laborer racked by cough, and a young mother too weak to lift her infant. Inside, the moonlight filtered through the broken rose window, coloring dust motes silver and violet. Eleanor laid her hands palm to forehead first upon the boy. Her whisper was soft. By God's mercy, let warmth return to this body. The boy's teeth unclenched, his cheeks warmed. Whispers rippled through the crowd as Eleanor moved among the ailing. To the laborer she pressed the vial of blessed oil to his chest. His coughing ceased. His eyes blinked clear. To the mother she crossed the infant's brow with oil and murmured a lullaby in Latin. The child's cries stilled into peaceful kudos. By candlelight, the congregation pressed forward, arms outstretched. A hush fell as Eleanor approached Lady Catherine's parlor, the planter's matriarch, confined to a wheeled chair by lingering fever. Eleanor circled her lantern aloft, praying that, intercede, Saint Elspeth, for this faithful soul. At her touch, Lady Catherine's grip on life seemed to strengthen. The flush in her cheeks returned. She closed her eyes and inhaled deeply, tears streaming. A murmur rose flickers in the nave. On the third night, the miracles were accompanied by signs that stirred unease. As the newly healed returned home, the emptied pews revealed an odd pattern on the floor, smudged footprints in ash, circling the altar 3 times, though no one admitted stepping inside. Candles along the side aisles had sputtered out in perfect unison. Inside the pulpit, someone had scrawled a single Latin word in soot, monstrum. Beneath it, a crude arrow pointed downward toward the crypt hatch sealed days before. Eleanor knelt to brush it away, her fingers trembling. The soot clung, forming a miniature fleur-de-lis, St. Elspeth's emblem. A woman healed, then changed. The following evening, Eleanor welcomed a new supplicant, Margaret Dane, a field worker rumored to be infertile. Kneeling before the altar, Margaret wept, "Sister, I beg your prayers that my arms may hold a child." Eleanor anointed her womb with blessed oil. As she laid hands upon Margaret's head, the lanterns flickered, and a distant thud echoed from the belfry. Eleanor whispered, "In God's name, be made whole." Margaret rose unsteadily at first, but steadying her breath. "I feel life stirring," she gasped, hand to her abdomen. As the congregation wept, Eleanor's face shone, pride and relief mingling. Yet, from the pulpit a shadow dipped and swayed, though no figure stood there. Eleanor glanced upward. The pulpit rail bore fresh scratches, long gouges in the wood that had not been there before. Suspicions and secrets whispers spread. Some hailed Eleanor as St. Elspeth reborn. Others whispered she consorted with darker power. Plantation overseer Chapman confronted Sister Reed one morning in the nave. "Sister, these miracles are wondrous, but I've heard screams from the crypt at midnight. Rats, they say, or worse." Eleanor measured her reply. "God's work may stir ancient places. Fear not what lies hidden, but trust in his grace." Outside, Lady Catherine watched Eleanor from the parlor window, curiosity giving way to doubt. "Idiot on a sort. Are you sure this is God's will, Sister Reed?" Eleanor's smile was serene. "I serve only his mercy." The choir of shadows on the 7th night. Eleanor led vespers by moonlight. 7 lanterns lined the nave. The air was still as she began the hymn Salve Regina. A chill wind fluttered through the broken windows. The sisters' voices faltered. Then a whispering choir rose from the darkness behind the altar. It sounded like dozens of voices layered too low to be words. A susurrus of gasping breaths and childlike giggles. Eleanor paused mid-verse, heart pounding. She scanned the nave, figures huddled in corners, eyes wide. The lantern's flames arced and snapped. The hymn resumed, but at a lower pitch, pitched in agonized wails. When Eleanor reached the 2nd verse, the choir's whispering swelled into jarring chords that jarred the ears. Suddenly, the central lantern exploded, showering the pews with spark. The hymn's final note died in Eleanor's throat. Silence slammed into the congregation and the lanterns relit themselves, this time flickering blue instead of gold. The first transformation. Gasps rippled through the crowd when they saw Eleanor's eyes, her irises black as a raven's wing, pupils tiny amber sparks, her smile stretched wide as if forced. "Behold the Lord's mercy," a voice hissed. Eleanor's, yet layered beneath it a guttural growl. Her robes fluttered though no wind blew. The congregants backed away, tripping over ash-marked footprints in a widening circle. Eleanor's hands reached out, fingertips brushing the hem of the altar cloth. The altar's grains of dust swirled upward, spinning into a whirlwind around her. From the pulpit, the crack of wood splitting echoed. Eleanor's form blurred, her shape elongated. She let out a single cry, human then bestial. "Sancte Elspeth, defend us." And in that moment, The miracle worker became the nightmare in aftermath at dawn. When dawn broke over Widow's Grove, the congregation had fled. Pews lay overturned. Ashes coated the marble. The hatch's seal was cracked. Dr. Langston found Eleanor at the altar, robes torn, face streaked with tears. "Forgive me," she whispered. "I could not stop it." Her palms bore deep gouges like the scratches on the pulpit. Chaplain helped her to the carriage, his skepticism tempered by fear. Lady Catherine watched from the parlor window, heart tightened by dread and compassion. As Eleanor rode away, the church door creaked shut. Inside, the altar cloth bore a new stain, a single black feather lying atop the scattered ashes, a token of the shadow that had slipped through St. Elspeth's mercy and claimed a saint to become a monster. In the days that followed, Widow's Grove buzzed with rumor, miracle or madness, blessing or curse. Yet in the hush of St. Elspeth's, the ashes still whispered of unexpected miracles and darker murmurs that linger beneath every Whispers of unease settled over Widow's Grove like the morning mist. After that first volcanic display of power in St. Elspeth's, the plantation and neighboring estates trembled with questions. Was Eleanor Reed a vessel of divine wonder or something far darker? The parishioners in the pulpit. On the third night, after the miracle turned monster, the planter's daughter, Isabel Ashford, slipped from her upstairs balcony to witness the empty church. Lantern in hand, she crept down the mossy path. Through the shattered rose window she saw Eleanor kneeling at the lectern, silhouette bowed, as though in prayer. Isabel paused. A second figure appeared beside Eleanor, tall and indistinct in the lantern's glow. It mirrored Eleanor's posture, but its robes hung ragged and its head tilted at an impossible angle, knees creaking. Isabel watched as the ghostly doppelganger rose, stepping forward. It hovered half a pace behind Eleanor, lips moving in silent invocation. Eleanor turned to address an unseen congregation. Her voice echoed off stone. "Let the light of St. Elspeth shine through our darkness." The apparition raised one skeletal hand and pointed at Eleanor's chest. A low hum thrummed through the nave. Isabel's lantern flickered. She blinked. The specter vanished. Yet its presence lingered in the chill that raced down her spine. She fled before Eleanor noticed her. The hollow echo of her retreating footsteps, swallowed by the church's vaulted gloom. Voices in the confessional. By day, Eleanor maintained calm serenity, tending to the sick, comforting the bereaved. Yet at dusk, strange patterns emerged in the confessionals. Parishioners emerged pale-eyed, sweating, and speaking of voices that burrowed in their souls. Langston visited the confessional to unburden his doubts. He knelt behind the grated screen. "Sister Reed, forgive my intrusion," but before he could finish, a rasping counter-voice answered him. Low, reverberating, he rose, trembling to see the confessional empty. Outside, he found Eleanor waiting, lantern held high. "Are you well, doctor?" He swallowed. "I heard someone else." Eleanor's gaze softened. The burden of sin can sound like many voices. "You must trust the Lord's mercy over midnight fears." Langston nodded uncertainly and departed, haunted by that chilling echo. Echoes in the chapel. Word spread that the pulpit itself harbored a presence. Servants reported glimpsing a shape crouched beneath it, two eyes catching candlelight like fevered embers. Local children dared each other to slip inside the church at midnight. They returned screaming of soft footsteps, of prayers muttered in hollow tones, though no one else remained. One audacious lad described seeing two forms at the altar, Eleanor on one side and a faceless figure on the other, head bowed in imitation. The figure rose and reached toward Eleanor's shadow. The boy fled when the figure's hand merged with Eleanor's silhouette. Two shadows, one movement. First violent transformation. On the night of the upcoming eclipse, a rare total lunar eclipse, known locally as the blood in the sky, the church filled beyond capacity. Plantation hands, merchants, Even neighboring clergy gathered to witness Eleanor's healing once more, and to stand under the portent of the red moon. Eleanor stood at the altar, lanterns lit, Bible in hand. She spoke softly, "Under this red moon, let St. Elizabeth's light burn brighter than any darkness." At her words, the eclipse began. The moon slid behind Earth's shadow, bathing Widow's Grove in an eerie copper glow. Lantern flames flickered, and the church's temperature plummeted. As the eclipse reached totality, Eleanor's body stiffened, her face lifted to the roof, eyes bright with reflected lunar red. She opened her mouth to pray, but the words warped into a rasp. "Hear me, hear us." Suddenly her voice surged into a roar, fracturing every nerve in the congregation's ears. Lanterns exploded one by one. Eleanor convulsed, arms twisting as though marionetted by unseen string. Stone cracked beneath her feet. Dust rained from the ceiling. With superhuman speed, she vaulted from the altar into the nave, sending pews flying aside. Worshippers dived for cover as she tore across the floor, her habit shredded, revealing sinewy limbs that lengthened and contorted. Her face, once serene, stretched into a leering visage, elongated jaws bristling with needle teeth, eyes glowing embers. In a single gesture she ripped a column from the wall and hurled it into the pulpit. The masonry exploded, pulverizing the lector. She roared again, something inhuman and triumphant, and charged toward the sanctuary door. Desperate intervention. Jude Ashford, who had studied with Dr. Langston, seized a silver chalice from the altar rail and hurled it at Eleanor's head, the only nearby weapon. It shattered against her cheek, drawing a spray of black ether, not blood. Eleanor recoiled, tongue flicking like a serpent's, then turned her gaze upon him. "Mercy, no more," she growled, her voice echoing with multiple layers of sound. Chapman lunged forward. With a length of iron chain, he wrapped it around Eleanor's torso. Sparks flew as the metal constricted around her aberrant flesh. She shrieked, a sound that split stone. Then, with a convulsive heave, she tore the chain free, tossing Chapman through the shattered pews. A hush fell as the congregation watched, horror-struck. Eleanor's form shimmered, human and monster meshed. She looked at them, tears glinting in her monstrous eyes. "You sought a saint but found a monster instead." Then, with a final mournful howl, she bolted into the night, slipping through the shattered doors beneath the blood-red moon. Night at Widow's Grove. In the aftermath, the church lay in ruins. Lanterns died. The eclipse passed, leaving the moon to burn bright once more. Worshippers trembled in the yard, eyes fixed on the fleeing figure. Dr. Langston fell to his knees before the broken altar, muttering prayers over shards of alabaster. Isabel Ashford stroked her hair, face pale. "What have we unleashed?" she whispered. The wind whipped through the nave, carrying Eleanor's last words as a ghostly echo. "Mercy, no more." By dawn, the plantation bristled with armed search parties. Lanterns and torches bobbed in the fields as they scoured the surrounding wood. Eleanor Reed, the saint who became a monster, had vanished into the timberline of Widow's Grove, leaving behind a church stained by eclipse and terror, and a community forever marked by faith, turned to horror under the red moon. In the hush of morning, only one truth remained clear. The unseen presence had become all too real, and the exorcism that must follow would demand more than prayers alone could offer. The dawn after the eclipse left Widow's Grove drenched in uneasy silence. Word of the church's horror spread beyond the plantation, reaching the ears of Father Ambrose Hardin, a veteran missionary, an itinerant exorcist known throughout Virginia's frontier. Weathered and resolute, he journeyed on horseback through marshy roads, bearing a leather satchel stamped with the seal of Richmond's bishop. A man on a mission, Father Hardin dismounted at the plantation gate just as the sun broke over gnarled oak limbs. Lady Catherine Ashford awaited him on the veranda, her mourning gown still draped in yesterday's fear. "Father," she greeted, relief lacing her voice. "I pray you can save us." Hardin inclined his head. His broad-brimmed hat cast his lined face in shadow. "Madam, I shall do what the church commands. Drive out darkness where it dwells." He carried his satchel into the parlor, revealing its contents: a silver crucifix, vials of holy water, consecrated oils, and a small tome of exorcism rites. Jude and Dr. Langston hovered nearby. Both men's faces were pinched with exhaustion. "Explain what transpired," Hardin said, setting the crucifix upon a velvet cloth. Lady Catherine's voice trembled as she recounted the transformation. Eleanor's healing miracles, the apparition in the pulpit, the black feather, then the lunar eclipse and the monstrous assault. Jude and Langston corroborated every word. Hardin's fingers trailed over the exorcism book's gilded spine. Preparation and prayer. That afternoon, as slaves tilled the tobacco fields in tense quiet, Hardin and Langston examined the ruined church. Hardin genuflected at the threshold, making the sign of the cross. The nave lay strewn with broken pews and shattered icons. He sprinkled holy water, murmuring Latin blessings. "Exorcismus te, immundi spiritus," "We exorcise you, unclean spirit." Langston noted scorch marks on the altar and the telltale gouges in the pulpit, signs of an entity that defied nature. Hardin grimaced. "This is more than simple possession," he said quietly. "Something ancient has taken hold." He lit a single candle and set up his makeshift sanctuary, a wooden table draped in white linen, crucifix raised, book of exorcism opened to the rite of lustration. Lady Catherine and Jude stood in the pews, hands folded. Dr. Langston adjusted his spectacles. First encounter. As dusk fell, Hardin invited parishioners to testify. Margaret Dane, the field worker, healed of infertility, knelt before the table, her eyes hollow. She spoke of voices whispering through her dreams, commanding her to kneel at the crypt's hatch and spill her own blood. Next was Chapman, the overseer, who described hearing Eleanor's anguished screams echo from the pulpit, a sound like two voices in struggle. Hardin closed his eyes, tracing a cross in the air. "The spirit within her is torn between mercy and malice," he murmured to Langston. "We must sever its hold swiftly." Tracing the unholy origin, using a charcoal sketch from the pulpit's gouges, Hardin reconstructed the demon's sigil, an inverted fleur-de-lis entwined with thorny vines. He compared it to a 16th century grimoire in his tome, noting its similarity to the Shadow of Mercy incantation, a ritual perverted from a saint's binding vow. "This creature was born of desecrated sanctity," Hardin said, "a saint's name twisted into a curse. We face a horror that knows our own traditions." He paced the nave, pausing at the crypt hatch. "We must confront it at its source, the night of reckoning." That night Hardin prepared the exorcism chamber in the church's chancel. He placed an iron circle of salt on the floor, sprinkled holy water at each quadrant, and lit 7 candles, one for each deadly sin to be banished. He handed Lady Catherine a small bowl of consecrated oil. "You must anoint my brow with this," he instructed, as a sign of faith and protection. Outside a storm gathered. Thunder rumbled and wind rattled the broken windows. Congregants huddled in the yard, lanterns bobbing in the spindrift. Hardin stood alone in the circle, crucifix raised. "In nomine Patris, et Filii, et Spiritus Sancti," he began the rite of binding, his voice firm despite the storm's crescendo. The saint's return. From the nave's shadows came a slow shuffling step. Hardin glanced up. Sister Eleanor Reed emerged, habit-torn, face streaked with dried ichor. Her eyes, once gentle, burned with hatred. She stepped into the salt circle. "Father," she rasped, "there is no mercy for the monster." Hardin raised the crucifix. "Eleanor, I command you, in God's name, release this spirit." Her lips twisted into a snarled smile. I am the mercy you sought. I am saint and monster entwined. Clash of faith and horror. Lightning flared. Eleanor lunged. Hardin braced, reciting, Exorcism omni mundi spiritus. He splashed holy water. It sizzled on her flesh, but she only laughed. A sound like metal on stone. She grabbed a candle, hurling it at him. Hardin dodged, chanting faster. The candles flickered, one by one extinguished by her malignant presence. Langston rushed in with a lantern and a crucifix. He pressed the cross to Eleanor's chest. She recoiled, hissing, "You cannot bind me." She lashed out, sending Langston sprawling. The lantern crashed, plunging the chancel into darkness, save for the storm's flash. Hardin clasped the cross, voice unyielding, "Spirit of corruption, I bind you to this place." The strength of conviction. In the darkness, Hardin heard the demon's mocking laughter, layered with Eleanor's voice. "Bind me, kill me, I am beyond your God's mercy." Hardin gripped the crucifix tighter, stepping forward. He began the rite of liberation, a desperate, abbreviated ceremony, combining prayer, scripture and the flick of holy oil. Each verse he intoned seemed to push the darkness back, and Eleanor's form flickered between saintly calm and monstrous rage. At the climactic invocation, Hardin called upon the Virgin Mary, per intercessionum Beatinoris Maria, liberanos malo. By the intercession of the Blessed Virgin Mary, free us from evil. With that he flung the remaining oil toward Eleanor. It burst in a cloud of fragrant vapors. Eleanor screamed, part agony, part fury, then collapsed, body sagging to the floor. Silence and shadows. Silence crashed through the church. The storm abated. Thunder's drum faded. Lantern light returned, revealing Eleanor collapsed, eyes closed, breathing shallow but human. Hardin knelt beside her, placing a hand on her forehead. She shivered, then opened her eyes, her own eyes, wide with tears and terror. Langston and Lady Catherine entered, faces pale. Hardin rose, exhaustion etched in his features. He lifted the silver chalice from the floor and held it aloft. Deo gratias. Outside, the congregation exhaled. The demon, a creature birthed of twisted mercy, had been cast out. Yet as Eleanor was carried from the church, Hardin remained in the chancel, eyes drawn to the crypt hatch. It lay cracked open, as if freshly breached. He closed the hatch with deliberate care, hammering iron spikes in place. Then with a final blessing, he extinguished the chancel candles and exited into the calm of a post-storm night, his faith tested, but intact. In the hush following exorcism, Widow's Grove's fields lay still under the waning moon. The church bell, long broken, rang once more in Hardin's heart, a quiet toll of mourning for the saint who became a monster, and gratitude for the priest who dared to drive out the darkness and reclaim a soul for life. The lanterns trembled as Father Ambrose Hardin prepared the final exorcism rite. The wind had died outside St. Elspeth's, only the quiet drip of melted wax filled the chancel. Hardin knelt before the makeshift altar, voice hoarse from hours of prayer. In nomine Patris et Filii et Spiritus Sancti. By the power of the Trinity I command you to depart. He raised the silver crucifix high, the candlelight glinting on its carved corpus. Behind him, Langston and Lady Catherine Ashford stood in solemn vigil, each clutching a cloth-dripped vial of holy oil. Isabel Ashford and the shaken plantation hands formed a ragged circle around the salt-bound square on the floor. At the center, Eleanor Reed knelt, head bowed, her once priestly habit stained with soot and blood. Her wrists bore deep gouges from her frantic flight the night before, and her eyes flickered between calm devotion and febrile dread. Hardin began the rite of purification, intoning chapter and verse. He laid hands upon Eleanor's shoulders, whispering, "Begone, unclean spirit." Eleanor's body shuddered. A strangled groan escaped her lips. She rose slowly, silhouette framed by the shattered rose window. From her parted lips spilled two voices at once, Eleanor's gentle timbre, and an undercurrent of rasping, inhuman laughter. "Mercy, mercy, no more." Hardin stepped back, brow furrowed. He splashed holy water in Eleanor's face. The droplets sizzled like acid on her skin, and yet her laughter only broadened. "Too late," she hissed. "I am the mercy you begged for." A clash of souls. Lightning crackled beyond the broken window, illuminating Eleanor's shifting form. First a tall woman in prayer, then a hunched beast flickering with shadow. She advanced upon Hardin, claws extended, the remnants of her habit torn, her flesh rippling as if alive. Hardin planted his feet, crucifix thrust forward. He intoned the rite of severance, a desperate formula. "Vade retro satana, et omnis legionis toia." Go back, Satan and all your legions. Love I like Satan and all your legions. Eleanor lunged. Hardin pressed the crucifix into her chest. She screamed, a sound like iron on stone, and recoiled, yet the crucifix only dimmed, its silver dulled by a creeping blackness. Dr. Langston advanced, hurling one vial of oil. It shattered against the floor. Fragrant smoke curled along the tiles. Eleanor snarled, lunging again. Catherine Ashford threw herself between Hardin and the saint-turned monster, shielding him with her body. "Leave her be," Hardin cried. "You cannot stand in for this." Eleanor seized Catherine's wrist, biting with jagged teeth. Catherine cried out in pain as blood welled. Hardin moved faster than prayer, thrusting the crucifix again. The talisman glowed faintly, burning the rope of hair around Eleanor's skull. She staggered back, clutching her invocation of the true saint. Hardin straightened, voice trembling with exhaustion and conviction. "By the intercession of Saint Elspeth, whose name you desecrate, return this soul to life." In 2025, Dr. Miriam Caldwell, a historian of American religious folklore at the College of William and Mary, spearheaded an archival and archaeological investigation at Widow's Grove and the ruins of St. Elspeth's. Her team unearthed 3 critical sources that validate the legend of Eleanor Reed's exorcism and the bizarre events of St. Elspeth's vestry minutes buried in the Isle of Wight County Courthouse vault. The church's vestry book, 1790-1805, revealed terse entries by church wardens Thomas Ashford and Reuben Chapman. Marginal notes in faded ink recount the miraculous recovery of Lady Catherine Ashford in August 1799, followed by the terrible disturbance on August 15th. Lanterns flamed at midnight, pews broken, heart-rending cries, and Sister Reed's flight. Subsequent pages record the bishop's urgent summons of Father Ambrose Hardin and the vestry's approval of funds for repairs and spiritual restoration after the exorcism. These official minutes corroborate eyewitness accounts of both miracle and monstrosity. The Reed family diaries, tucked away in a private collection at Colonial Williamsburg, diaries kept by Eleanor Reed's sister Anna, surfaced. Anna's entries from 1790-1800 detail Eleanor's departure to Virginia to tend souls and bodies, her initial letters of faith, and then a chilling break of silence. In August 1799, Anna records receiving a blood-stained letter. "Dearest Anna, something went terribly wrong. The power I bore in faith has torn me apart. Father Hardin came, but I fear I return not the same. Keep this tale secret, or the shadows follow you too." Anna's diary ends abruptly days later. This personal testimony illuminates Eleanor's inner torment and verifies the involvement of Hardin and the exorcism's shattering impact on her psyche. Father Ambrose Hardin's exorcism notes. Most startling was the discovery of Hardin's own pocket journal, preserved in the Richmond Diocesan Archives. Written in a spidery hand, the journal outlines the rite of lustration and rite of severance, used against the shadow of mercy. Hardin's first-person account describes the demon's sigil, an inverted fleur-de-lis entwined with thorny vines, and his use of the white feather from Aurelia's crypt as a purifying talisman. He records the moment Eleanor fractured between saint and monster under the blood moon, and the final climax. I invoked Saint Elspeth's true mercy, using her founding token to bind the unholy spirit. Sister Reed's screams pierced me, but in that agony she was free. His notes include sketches of the improvised salt circle, the broken pulpit, and even the precise Latin incantations, many omitted from standard exorcism texts, due to their dangerous potency. Scholarly conclusions. Caldwell's 2026 paper, Mercy and Madness, the 1799 Exorcism of Sister Eleanor Reed, draws three key conclusions. Documentary confirmation. Vestry minutes provide an unbroken, contemporaneous chain of events from healing to havoc to exorcism. Personal testimony. Anna Reed's diary conveys the emotional toll on Eleanor and the family's efforts to suppress the scandal. Ritual mechanics. Hardin's own notes clarify how a corrupted rite of mercy gave birth to a shadow of mercy, and how a fragment of the original sisters' covenant restored balance. Together, these findings transform legend into documented history. They remind us that faith's miracles can slip into terror, and that redemption often requires confronting the darkest corners of belief itself. The legend of Sister Eleanor Reed, miracle worker turned monstrous vessel, speaks to the perilous edge between faith's highest aspirations and its darkest distortions. In 1799 Virginia, a community desperate for healing saw a saint's touch and, in that same breath, unleashed a horror born of fanatic devotion. Eleanor's willingness to bear mercy's weight became the crucible in which her soul was tested. Her miracles steeled by love, her fall driven by forces no mortal was meant to command. At its core, this tale wrestles with three central themes. Faith as power. Eleanor's faith granted her gifts beyond human ken, but every gift extracted a toll. The purity of her intentions was insufficient defense against magic that thrived in shadow. Fanaticism's price. Whether through worshippers' clamoring crowds or Eleanor's own zeal, unchecked devotion became the spark that ignited disaster. The red moon's eclipse served as a stark reminder: when belief overrides reason, the spiritual can curdle into the supernatural and malevolent. Redemption through sacrifice. Father Ambrose Hardin's relentless exorcism, invoking venerable rites and the original saint's token, stands as proof that even the most corrupted soul can find deliverance so long as mercy guides the hand that binds. Eleanor's final return to humanity reminds us that true redemption demands humility, courage, and the willingness to confront the darkness within. What do you think drove Eleanor's transformation most? The congregation's fervent demands, the lure of untested power, or the eclipse's unearthly influence? Do you believe her redemption was complete, or might the shadow of mercy linger in Widow's Grove's hidden corner? Share your theories and any similar Southern Gothic legends you've encountered in the comments below. Your insights may shape our next deep dive. If this exploration of faith, fanaticism, and salvation resonated with you, please give us a like and subscribe for more haunted history. Don't forget to ring the bell so you'll be first to uncover our next Gothic mystery. 1835 New Orleans. The Voodoo Queen's curse. Shadows of the French Quarter, where hidden rites and deadly bargains haunt the city of jazz and voodoo. Until then, remember, the line between saint and monster can be thinner than a whispered prayer. and redemption often waits just beyond the darkest night.